military there is staying for a long time. They are headquartered there for decades. In some places you need schools, you need hospitals, you need a lot of things. These days you want the minimal support infrastructures for being able to host for a very limited period of time military forces that are there just to deploy elsewhere. That is the first thing, that you are not going to see 100,000 American soldiers moving from Germany to Romania or Bulgaria. This is not decided yet. We are obviously in an advantageous position, but it's not been decided yet. You are not going to see such a massive transfer of comparable, similar types of military presence, but a transformation of this presence. So you are looking out for airfields and the small bases, serving them for harbors perhaps, but to a lesser extent, and in general a minimal infrastructure and the ability to host a military presence for some time. We had Americans on the Black Sea shore in resorts we have down there. We were able, it was off season, we were able to accommodate them in the existing hotels, and that was all. They were there for like 3 or 4 months, not more than that. The reason for so many bets placed on Romania or Bulgaria or both of them is the fact that we are closer to where the challenges and the menaces and the risks are. That's all. This would be the only reasons. It's not only American military presence that is changing and that is going to be relocated, it is also NATO. NATO forces that are going to undergo a similar process. For instance, you now have one of the Supreme Allied commands that is called precisely like that, the Allied Command for Transformation and Change, and there's a commander for change in NATO. So these are plans that started being thought of a long time ago, years ago. It doesn't have anything to do with the way in which these risks have been manifesting themselves these days. It doesn't have anything to do with the alleged taking of sides by some of the countries from New or Old Europe in the context of the Iraq War. Please.
I have a question about image. Can you put to rest once and for all whether there really are vampires in Romania?
Well, it sells, so I'm not sure whether whether we need to do that. It's a very interesting story and historical underpinning to the legend of Vlad the Impaler, which was definitely not a gentle character, especially with his enemies, but not sure whether he was the bloodthirsty character that was later on described in the novels and movies that were so successful. The fact is that I'm told the historical truth has it that he participated in the middle of the 15th century in a gathering of the European princes of those days, which were they were not so numerous. They only gathered, I think, 7 of them. And the fact is that they had this tournament, this contest, and Vlad the Impaler won the contest. He was honored with the highest award of the German kingdom, where this was taking place, and he converted from Orthodoxy to Catholicism. When he came back, he hid both occurrences. He hid the fact that he was a Catholic, he became a Catholic, and he hid the award. The letter was discovered by compatriots of that time, and it was bearing a dragon figure on it. This was the symbol that dynasty. And they all thought that when they found out about the former, his Catholicism, they thought that he succumbed into a diabolic organization, and that's why he was called Vlad the Devil, later on the Impaler. The fact is that this was an interesting gathering, since it put the basis of an anti-Ottoman alliance. The Ottoman Empire, basically animated by the Turks of those days, was the main enemy of Europe. I mean, it was menacing the very heartland of Europe. So this is the historical truth. There is a castle that is attributed to him, and where all these gruesome, horrific things happen. But I hate to disappoint you. I hope you don't contemplate one of the thematic tours that we're organizing, and I didn't deter you from that. Actually, there's a very good red wine kept bearing the name Vlad the Impaler. You shouldn't shy away from tasting it. Yeah. Who's Hungarian?
The wine is Hungarian.
Now the Tokaj wine is Hungarian, and we recognize that.
What is your hopes and vision for Romania?
That's what I've been trying to describe. I think that, to put it in a nutshell, we're joining NATO in 3 weeks' time. Of course, very strong, very significant security guarantees were already mentioned by President Bush when he visited Bucharest. That's very difficult to forget. He put it very explicit that from now on your security is tied up to ours and to the other allies. And that's very important. We've been part of a military alliance until now, and that was the Warsaw Pact. But it was against our will, and we were actually a sort of, well, I don't want to be politically incorrect. Well, we were a dissenting nation even in those days. We didn't participate in most of the military exercises of the Warsaw Pact, which didn't eventually serve us well, since we ended up in being admired for being autonomous vis-à-vis the Soviet Union of those days, but but Ceausescu was operating like a Stalinist inside, so that ended up in a terrible isolation of Romania. And the second thing is, of course, this wonderful perspective of joining the European Union, which will still require some efforts, a lot of negotiation, a lot of restructuring, but eventually we would be a part of a set of disciplines, of policies that do not allow you to make mistakes or to make too many mistakes. There's so many checks and balances, especially in a European Union of 27 or more countries. And it's participating in an experience, in a historical experience. That European Union will for sure have a much greater voice, a much louder voice, and a much greater role to play as an actor by itself on the world stage. So that would be participating in a wonderful experience. Now, of course, the two are different. We believe these are twin objectives, joining NATO and joining the European Union, but joining NATO requires transformation of basically parts of your military establishment. Of course, it requires a series of changes and compatibility in as far as the government is concerned. But it's just part of what we need to do in order to become a EU country. For that, you have to transform the entire society. You have to have Romanians behaving, thinking like the other Europeans of today. Yes.
How big a problem is corruption in Romania?
In terms of perception, it is a huge problem. In terms of realities, it is a considerable problem that we need to address. It's two prongs to that problem: the corruption that is related to undertakings of a certain scale, and the daily corruption, the daily petty corruption that the citizen is